What's going on, everybody? This is Derek Grant, aka DG. Welcome back to DG Mindset. Today we're going to break down the ego, understanding the ego and its relationship to time so you can create the life that you desire. As always, make sure you hit that little bell so you know when we drop a new video. Also, if this video resonates with you at all, please let me know in the comments. Share this video with anybody who you feel like this would help them. Let's jump a little deeper. Let's go dive into what the ego is, how time is created by the ego, and then let's figure out how do we use the ego for what it was actually intended for. Number one, we have to understand that the ego is not the enemy. The ego is nothing more than a tool. Think of it like a hammer. If you don't know how to use a hammer, everything to you looks like it's a nail. Whether it's a window, it could be a mirror, it could be a desk, you're going to be banging everything. But if you know what the hammer is used for, now you can use it as a tool. So my point of this is this. When you start to realize that the ego is nothing more than the unconscious part of your mind. Okay, so let's understand how your mind works, okay? There's 3 planes of awareness that we exist on simultaneously, and we'll go through this really quickly, all right? So your awareness is on the spiritual plane. This is what we refer to as our being. Sometimes we call it spirit. We can call it the self, whatever we refer to it as. If you look at it, we're called human beings. The being is the spiritual part of you. But then we also have this part of us that we call the mental plane, where our mind resides, our thoughts. Then we have the third plane, which is the physical plane. This is where your body is. This is where physical life is taking place. So if we're operating in a healthy life, right, we're going from top down. Spirit, mind, body. The spiritual plane is governing our thoughts, and then the mental plane is then carrying it out in the physical reality. Where we get in trouble is when we don't have the awareness of what we actually are. We're not aware of our thoughts that are going on. And then we allow the physical plane to influence how we think. So think of it like this. We always want to make sure we live a top-down life. So here's what ends up happening where we get in trouble. The ego resides right here on this mental plane. So if we were to draw a dotted line here, it fragments itself. So now there's 2 parts. We refer to this as what we would call the soul. The Greeks refer to it as psyche. You understand that psyche is the Greek word for soul. This is where we get psychology. This is the study of the soul, the conscious part of our mind that's closest to spirit. But then it fragments itself and breaks itself off, and we have what we call the ego. So this is the unconscious part of our mind. This is the conscious part of our mind. So remember what our spirit, self, being, this is the part of us that exists outside of space and time, right? It's all knowing, all in creativity, infinite knowledge, awareness. When it's projecting down and we're in alignment with our soul, we now will carry this out in our physical life. But where we get in trouble is when our awareness is only caught up here in the ego, and the ego operates through duality. It operates in separation. It operates in this thing that we call linear time. So now we don't see the relationship between our physical life and our thoughts. So, why is this important for you? Because when you understand that your physical reality is nothing more than a reflection of what is going on the mental plane, ask yourself, am I living unconsciously or am I living consciously? And here's how we figure that out. So I told you time is not linear. Think of time as being a spiral like this. The ego in this third dimension processes time like this. So we have what we refer to as the past. We have over here what's called the future. But the reality of it, the only thing that exists is this thing that we call now, the present moment. And here's what's happening. Every second, there is a new moment that we call now. And it's happening so quickly that we don't realize that these are a series of moments. This is why we call it a present moment. It's a series of moments that are happening like this. It's kind of like a picture book. Do you ever take a picture book and you draw a stick figure? You know what you used to do when you were kids? And you draw a stick figure and on the next page it moves just a little bit, next page it moves just a little bit. What happens when we take each page and go, now we start to see the picture, the stick man start to walk or he's moving. But really, it's just a series of moments that add up. So this is why it was so difficult for us to stay present, because the ego can only live in the past or the future. So this is the home of the ego. So now, it never is in the present moment. So when we're unconscious, meaning we're living through past wounds or things that have happened unconsciously, we're stuck in the past or we're stuck in the future. And here's what we have to understand. The past and the future are just mind-made constructs using this thing called the imagination, or using this thing that we call memory. So when I'm unconsciously using memory, guess what? I'm going to be stuck in the past. And when I'm unconsciously using memory, here's the things that I'm going to feel. I'm going to feel regret. I'm going to feel shame for past things. I'm going to feel guilt. I'm going to feel unworthy. So if you feel any of these things, that is a telltale sign that you are living unconsciously through the wounds of your ego. If I'm using my imagination unconsciously, I'm going to feel fear, stress, worry, anxiety. These are all telltale signs that you're not actually present. Now, on this mental plane right here, this is where this thing called time is created. It is a mental construct. Here's the reality of it. It's always only now. I want you to go outside, or you can stay in your house, and go ask an animal, whether it's a dog, whether it's a squirrel, go ask a bird what time it is. Is it present? Is it past or is it future right now? They're gonna look at you crazy and be like, it's now. It's always been now. It is eternally always only now. But here's the hard part. Now is an ever-fleeting moment that's always going into the next now. But we have the ability, using memory, using imagination, to look off in the future or to look back in the past, and we never realize this eternal space that we call now was right here. And this is how you beat the ego. This is how you use the ego for what it was intended for. The ego was to carry out the conscious soul's mission. The ego was the tool that was used by the carpenter. So now you can start to create your physical life as you want, as long as you have gone back and dealt with the parts of your ego that kept you stuck in the past and then projected into the future. What's going on, everybody? If these videos are helping you in any way, shape, or form, and you want to take your journey just a little bit deeper, whether it's attending a DG Mindset Experience retreat or joining the DG Mindset community, go to dgmindset.com, where we have tools, we have resources to help you further your journey so you can figure out who you are. So we're going to break this down here of really what this looks like when we start to understand this thing called time and how it plays into our wounds. I told you that time is not linear, and here's proof that time is not linear. You can go back and think about something that happened when you were 10 years old. And that thing that happened when you were 10 years old is still affecting who you are today. So think of it like this. Here you are, you're 10 years old, right? Something happened that created a trauma response when you were 10. Okay? So something happened that made you feel guilt, unworthy. Maybe your parents got a divorce, or dad left home, or whatever it is. It made you feel unworthy. It created this perspective, this self-concept that you weren't good enough. So now if we fast forward, here you are now at the age of 40, and this same person now walks around and feels the need to people please. Meaning, you keep getting in toxic relationships. You stay in business partnerships that you know good and well you shouldn't be in anymore. You keep saying yes to people even though you really want to say no. The reason why is because of this version of you that seemingly is gone, that's passed away, that's no longer exists. Psychologically, on the mental plane, that version of you still exists. It is frozen in time. So here's what ends up happening. Life gives you these things that we call triggers. And the trigger comes up through somebody making you feel guilty, somebody making you feel unworthy. And it triggers this because this is still inside of you. Psychologically, you still have the same song, the same guilt, the same unworthiness being told subconsciously, meaning it's outside of your awareness. So how we combat this is we start paying attention to the energy that's moving in our body. And this is what we call emotions. Emotions comes from the Greek word emotir, which means energy in motion. So your emotions are trying to tell you, based off your physical, off the central nervous system, what stories, what wounds, what things have to be reconciled from my past. Because here's what ends up happening. If you are raised feeling guilt, if you feel unworthy, that's going to form your perspective of yourself. And this is what we call a self-concept. And I want you to remember this. You'll never outperform your self-concept. However you see yourself, you will always be that. Your life will mirror that. So if I have a distorted self-concept that I'm unworthy, guess what? I can't outperform anything or produce anything in my physical life that I don't believe that I'm worthy of. So this is why healing is such an important facet of understanding the ego. We have to go back and deal with the parts of us that were created in the past that are then projecting fear into the future so we can start to be who we want to be in the present moment. So our physical plane is nothing more than a reflection of what's going on with us mentally. Your job is to become aware of what patterns, what wounds, what stories, what distorted self-concepts is my ego still holding on to. So I see this so often with people I work with, and we see this in the world. We seek validation on the outside. We need approval from other people. I need to make a certain amount of money and then I'll be good enough. Why? Because the ego's biggest thing that it's afraid of is not existing anymore. The ego is rooted in survival. Why? Because it's competing against something that is infinite. Think about it. It's like that guy at the party who's loud. Oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because really deep down inside they're insecure. They just want to be seen. The ego is rooted in survival because it's competing against something that is infinite. You, your spirit, the part of you that exists outside of space and time, the real you, is what we're trying to get back to. And when we do this, we can start living from a top-down lifestyle. We start to live with the awareness of that which we actually are, instead of living through the fractured wounds of our unconscious mind of what we call the ego. So your job is to ask yourself, what patterns am I still holding on to that are no longer serving me? And when you get to that awareness, this is where we'll start. You can start now to work through these old wounds that are stopping you. And here's the thing. The triggers are going to have you feel fear. They're going to have you feel anxiety. They're going to have you feel stress. They're going to have you feel guilt. They're going to have you feel shame. In that moment, you ask yourself, what version of this is did this story develop? So if I'm feeling fear right now, when do I remember feeling fear in my childhood? Oh, well, maybe when dad was upset, or maybe dad came home drinking and he was violent. Okay. So then the fear that you're feeling right now is linked back to the energy of that version of you. The next question you ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? Why are you so afraid that you won't make the money? What is it really? It's not about the money. It's the energy that the money won't produce. So if I'm afraid that, what if I don't make the money and I don't have enough money? Okay, why? Because then my family may look at me as a failure. Oh, so really, this is the energy of shame. You really don't want the money. You just want to be good enough for your family. So when we start to bring awareness, as Dr. Carl Jung said, when you start to make the unconscious conscious, the unconscious no longer dictates your life. And this is when we start to use the ego as a tool instead of it using itself as a weapon. So just to recap, the ego is not the enemy. The ego is what's creating time, and it makes it look like time is linear, but time's not linear. You can always go back and see what parts of yourself need to be reconciled, need to be patched up. And I'm here to tell you this is a full-time job. You will never be done, so you might as well turn your shot clock off. People always wonder, well, when am I going to be done healing? You'll never be done. And this is the beauty of it, because every time that you heal, you bring just a little bit more awareness, a little bit more light to yourself. Wow, I know why this bothers me now. Because you know why it bothers you. Guess what? It won't bother you anymore. So it's equal proportion. The more that I heal, the more that I expand. The more joy that I bring into my life. The more presence I bring into my life. So know that you'll never be done. Hunker down and get to the healing. If this video has helped you at all, let me know in the comments. I try to make this simple for you. I'm a pretty simple guy. I like to make things pretty easy so I can explain to my 12-year-old, my 10-year-old. If this resonates with you, share this with somebody. We look forward to seeing you on the next DG Mindset video. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your awareness. And thank you for continuing on your journey. And we'll see you next time.